Your home, if you have a basement, that's the best place to be at this point. I realize it's almost 10:30 at night, but this is a serious storm that has the potential to produce a tornado at any moment. Here's a look at the radar, and I've also put the tracker on it that can show you some of the towns that are in the path of the storm. 10:24, so right about now, moving into Berlin, New Hampshire, and then it will cross into western Maine as we get to around 11 o'clock. So the tornado warning is for the southern part of Coos County and the western part of Oxford County, and this is up until 11:15. It's our obligation that we break on the air and talk about these warnings as they happen. And this is a particularly dangerous situation because it's a nighttime supercell thunderstorm. It's not often that storms flare up in the middle of the night, but this is one that's had no problem growing stronger even after the sun has set. We'll widen things out just a little bit, and we'll be able to show you that the other area outside of the tornado warning is under a severe thunderstorm warning. So if you're in western Maine, I'm sure you can hear the thunder and see the lightning off in the distance. The storm is traveling to the southeast at about 35 miles per hour. And again, here are some of the towns that are in the path. The immediate threat is for Berlin, New Hampshire, but once we get closer to 11 o'clock, this will be crossing into western parts of Oxford County. So again, a tornado warning has been issued till 11:15 this evening. We'll jump onto the velocity mode of the radar, which we showed you a couple of minutes ago. That allows us to show the rotation within the storm. And here's a look at it. It's coming right into Berlin, New Hampshire. So if there is a tornado at this point, it would be coming right into Berlin, New Hampshire, right around Route 110 and Route 16 there in northern New Hampshire. So anybody who is in Coos County, especially the Berlin area, and then once you get southeast of there toward Route 2, if you're living in the Route 2 corridor, you need to take this storm seriously. And although there isn't a reported tornado at the moment, the rotation within the thunderstorm is strong enough that a tornado could occur at any moment. We're also streaming this live on Facebook, and you're welcome to join us there. And if you're in the area and can safely let us know what's happening where you are, those reports are always appreciated, especially in a situation like this. But this is a storm that we have to take especially seriously because it's in the middle of the night that this tornado warning has come out. So nobody's going to be able to see a tornado if one is happening. And at the moment, the signature that I'm seeing here on radar is especially concerning for Berlin, New Hampshire. You can see these greens and reds coming right into Berlin. If there is a tornado, it is coming right in to Berlin, New Hampshire right now. So our friends in Coos County, especially in Berlin and in Gorham, need to take this especially seriously. We'll show some of the tips here and safety advice in a situation like this. Many of you know this because we do occasionally get tornado warnings in Maine and in New Hampshire, and this one's no different. The advice is to get to the lowest level of your home if you can. If you have a basement, that's the best place to be in this situation. And for those of you in Berlin, New Hampshire at this point, it's particularly important that you take this storm seriously. We don't have a report of a tornado on the ground, but the rotation is clear and evident within the storm. And that rotation, if it becomes strong enough, may be able to produce a tornado at any moment. Additionally, good advice here, if you're getting into your basement, bring along some blankets and pillows to protect yourself if you were to be hit by the storm. And if there is a tornado, that's another way that you can kind of protect your body in a situation like this. So we'll show you the radar here and kind of give you a closer look at what's going on. A wider scale shows this is the only severe thunderstorm within the entire region. It's just a particularly strong one, and that's why we have this tornado warning that's been issued for a very small part of our viewing area. But it is a critical situation where a tornado may form at any point right now with this thunderstorm coming through Berlin, New Hampshire, set to cross into the Route 2 corridor around Bethel in the next 15 to 20 minutes. Here's a closer look. You can see the rotation is right on top of Berlin. So as I mentioned, at night we can't see if a tornado is happening, but radar allows us to see the winds and how they may be moving within the thunderstorm. So in this case, we have winds that are moving away from the radar and winds that are moving toward the radar. that rotation happens to be right over Berlin, New Hampshire right now. So if there is a tornado within this thunderstorm, that tornado is happening near Berlin. I'm going to step off and just give you a fresh track on the storm. We'll be able to get a few more main towns onto this as well. You can see the storm's right over Berlin right now. So if there is a tornado happening at this point, it is happening in Berlin, New Hampshire. We'll draw a track for you live on the screen. The storm is moving to the southeast at 35 miles per hour. So here are a couple of the towns that are in the path of the storm. If it were to hold together, the rotation and the center part of the storm would be getting into Stoneham at 11:07, Waterford around 11:20, and Paris at 11:31. But I just want to show you the area that's under the tornado warning right now, and it's southeastern Coos County and western Oxford County. The areas in particular, we'll zoom right in to show you, are around Bethel, just to the west of Bethel, Gilead, Shelburne, Gorham, New Hampshire. The core of the storm right now is moving over Berlin, New Hampshire. And you can see we have an indication of winds moving this way and winds moving that way. And when that happens, that's rotation indicated by the radar. It doesn't look to be as strong as it was a few moments ago, but nonetheless, there is this tornado warning that's in effect. So anybody who is in the track of this storm needs to take this situation very seriously. And it's our obligation to bring these warnings to you when they are issued for any portion of our viewing area. We'll draw a track on this one more time, and we'll show you a couple of the towns that are in its path and extend it to the southeast. So at this point, some of the towns, as you can see here, include Shelburne, Gilead, as I've been talking about, and if the storm is able to hold together, which at the moment it's holding together quite well, it would be getting into Paris once we get toward 11:30. At the moment, you are not in the tornado warning, but if you're in the Paris area, you may be able to see the lightning strikes associated with the storm off in the northwestern sky. Right now, the center of the storm is coming right over Berlin and is starting to get close to Route 2. So if you are in the corridor around Route 2, around the western part of Newry, Bethel, and as you get right over toward the New Hampshire border, around Gorham and Berlin, this is the most concerning area at this point. A tornado warning is in effect until 11:15 because rotation is indicated in the thunderstorm cell itself. For the rest of you who are watching and are wondering why we're on the air, it's this one particular cell at the moment that has the potential to produce a tornado. It's isolated. It's the only one that's on the map at this point. So if you're watching from Augusta, Portland, Lewiston, Auburn, at the moment this is not a storm you need to be concerned about. However, it is moving to the southeast. So if it's able to get into closer to the main turnpike within the next hour and a half or 2 hours, this may be a storm that'll wake you up at the very minimum from thunder, lightning, heavy rain. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a way to get a warning in the middle of the night if this storm continues to show signs of rotation as it moves to the southeast. But we'll zoom you in right now and give you an update. The strongest part of the storm is over Berlin, New Hampshire. And one piece of good news that I have is that the rotation doesn't look quite as strong as it did about 10 or 15 minutes ago. You can still see that there is movement within the cloud this way and movement that way. But if you compare that to about 10 minutes ago, when we first broke in, you can see there was much more indication in either direction. That's kind of subsided some. It's become a little more ragged. So that suggests to me that at the moment, perhaps there's a little bit of good news, but it's too early to sound the all clear. So if you are within this area at this point, it's incredibly important that you take this storm seriously. Berlin, New Hampshire, Gorham, Shelburne, and then as you cross into Gilead, around Route 2 in western Maine. We're also up on Facebook at this point, so if you're able to safely chime in and let us know what's happening within your area, we would really appreciate it. Again, safely being the key word here. Let's put up the tornado safety tips if you're just joining us. if you are within this warning at this point, the advice is that you get to the lowest level of your home. If you have a basement, that's the safest place to be. But if you don't have a basement, an interior room or closet is the next best thing. You basically want to put as many walls between you and the tornado as possible. Again, we don't have a report of a tornado at the moment, but the thunderstorm is rotating and can contain a tornado or produce a tornado at any time. And it's particularly dangerous because it is nighttime. If there were a tornado, it would be incredibly hard to see, especially given it's over northern New Hampshire, not necessarily the most populated part of our area. Stay away from windows, doors, and outside walls. And as I mentioned, it's not a bad idea if you have some pillows, blankets, or even a helmet that you can bring along with you as you go back into protection. There was some hail, by the way, reported with this cell in northern New Hampshire. This is kind of the wide view. I'll zoom in and we'll be able to show you where that little hail core with the storm went, and that was kind of an indication that the storm was ramping up so fast that it produced some hail around Milan, New Hampshire about 15 or 20 minutes ago. Some of you may be wondering, how do we get a tornado warning within our region in the middle of the night? Well, the answer is, at this point, we've had so much heat, so much humidity, and essentially a new batch of heat and humidity is kind of being moved into our area. It just so happens it's happening at night. So that's able to maintain the thunderstorm, that instability, much later at night than usual. It's an unusual situation to see a supercell thunderstorm pop up at this hour anywhere. Even more unusual to see that happen in New Hampshire and Maine. So this is a storm to take particularly seriously, especially if you were in Coos County and western Oxford County. That's where this tornado warning is in effect until 11:15, and that's why we're on the air with you at this time. Outside of the tornado threat, there is a lot of heavy rain. There is a decent amount of lightning. Although I will say in the last couple of frames, it seems like the storm isn't quite as strong as it once was 15 or 20 minutes ago. So again, this is coming through Berlin, New Hampshire, and into western parts of Oxford County. Thank you, Teddy, our assignment manager. Nickel-sized hail in Milan, New Hampshire. We showed you that on the radar a little while ago, that the storm, as it came through Milan, was strong enough to produce some nickel-sized hail. And that's an indication of a particularly strong thunderstorm, especially in an air mass like this one. So here's another view of it, and we'll actually flip back to the velocity mode of the radar to show you the way those winds are moving within the thunderstorm. And we'll zoom right into where the area of most concern is at this point. The tornado, if there is one, would still be in New Hampshire, but just south of Berlin, getting pretty close to Route 2. Again, wind moving this way and wind moving that way. In between the two of them, that's where your potential tornado is at this point. It's not an awfully strong signature. We can kind of sample the different wind speeds here. You essentially have wind moving that way and wind moving the other way. And it's that rotation that if it becomes strong enough, it can produce a tornado. It's not quite as strong as it appeared when we first came on with you about 20 minutes ago, but it's still strong and concerning nonetheless. And the tornado warning is in effect until 11:15 for this part of northern New Hampshire and western Maine. At the moment, the core of the thunderstorm is still located over New Hampshire, but if you're watching from Bethel or West Paris, there was a brief downpour that just went through your area. The most concerning part of the storm is still located over in Coos County. It'll cross over from New Hampshire into western Maine, probably within about the next 15 minutes or so. And if there is a tornado, it's located right here near Gorham, New Hampshire. So at the moment, there is not a tornado in Maine, but anyone within this tornado warning zone has to take this storm seriously. As I mentioned, especially given it's nighttime, it's not often we have nocturnal tornadoes, so to speak. It's even harder to see them in person for obvious reasons at night, perhaps lit up by a lightning strike. That's about it. But again, this is moving to the southeast, just coming into Route 2 in Coos County, New Hampshire at this point. I'm going to check in on some of your reports. I'm also linked in with the National Weather Service to see what they have to say here. and we don't have many updates from them. Gail, I'm reading on Facebook, says not even a breeze in Freiburg at this point, to the south of the storm. I'm also seeing a lot of you on Facebook comment in on heat lightning. It's not heat lightning. I realize it's hot and humid out there, but if you're watching on Sebago Lake, for example, and you see all the lightning in the storm, it's the lightning that's 40 miles away from this thunderstorm that's coming through Coos County at this point. So again, this is the only area in the state, really, at the moment, and in the region, that we have a thunderstorm coming through. But it's a supercell thunderstorm. It's the strongest type of thunderstorm that we can get. And there is rotation indicated within the storm that could produce a tornado at any moment. We haven't had a report yet of a tornado, but this is a signature on radar that suggests we have rotation, wind moving that way, wind moving that way. And where those two meet, about to cross over Route 2 in Coos County, New Hampshire, that's where we have a potential tornado at this point, and that's why we are with you on the air at this time. Here's, again, a wider view, and I'm going to kind of set up with a tracker here so I can go back over to the weather wall. There is where the tornado warning is in effect. It's southeastern Coos County and a small part of Oxford County, particularly in the Route 2 corridor at this point. We'll put an updated track on this. It's been a few minutes since we've been able to put a track. So let's do that. The storm is moving southeast. We'll take it from where the potential tornado would be. And there are a couple of new towns, Waterford, Bridgeton. You're not in the tornado warning at this point, but if the storm were to hold together and make it into western Maine, and in particular your part of western Maine, you would be under the gun around 11:30. But at the moment, the most concerning part of the storm is in Coos County in New Hampshire. Let's also show you some of the lightning with the storm. We can go in and detect how much lightning there's been within the last half hour or so. And as you can see here, we're querying. You can see all the individual lightning strikes that show up there. It's somewhere in the range of probably 50 to 100 lightning strikes. So for one little thunderstorm, it's certainly a strong one. Here's another view of the hail. We had a report of hail that went through Milan, New Hampshire. We know that happened. There may have also been hail in Berlin, New Hampshire. You can see that little hail core that passed overhead there just within the last few minutes. So let's take it from the top here and just kind of reset for those of you who may be tuning in, wondering what's going on. It's meteorologist Ryan Breton with you at News Center, Maine. We are on the air because there is a tornado warning for a part of our viewing area at this point, and it's a small part. It's southeastern Coos County, western parts of Oxford County until 11:15 tonight. It's our obligation to bring you these warnings when they come in, and that's what we're doing at this point. The storm is still located just over the border in New Hampshire, but it's about to cross into western Maine, probably within about 15 or 20 minutes. Now, we're going to run through one more time here the track of the storm and where it's kind of headed in. If there is a tornado at this point, it's located right over Route 2 near Gorham, New Hampshire, and it's about to cross from Coos County in New Hampshire into western parts of Oxford County and western Maine. Here's the updated track on the storm. You can see it right here. It's moving from northwest to southeast, so very soon, within about 10 minutes, this will be crossing into western Maine with not only the potential for a tornado, but a lot of lightning, a lot of heavy rain, and perhaps some hail. We had reports of hail from Milan, New Hampshire, and you saw the view there on the radar in Berlin. I want to give you some safety tips, though, what you should do if you are within this tornado warning, especially if you're in Gorham, New Hampshire, or just over the border in western Maine along Route 2. If you have a basement, that's the best place to be. But say you live in an apartment or in a mobile home and you don't have a basement, the safest place to be if you are in that kind of a situation is an interior room, an interior bathroom, or a closet. You basically want to put as many walls between you and the possible tornado as you can. Because if the tornado were to hit your house, those walls, and particularly the plumbing in a bathroom, can hold together more strongly if they're in the middle of the house. So if you don't have a basement or a chance to seek shelter below ground, the lowest level of your home in an interior room, closet, or bathroom is the best place to be. So we're also monitoring reports. We're keeping our eyes open for that. We have I'm linked in with the National Weather Service, and if there is anything new that is coming out, we'll of course keep you posted. And by the way, just so you're aware, a watch, which was never issued today, means the potential exists for severe weather. A warning is issued when severe weather is happening, whether that be a hail, wind, or a tornado. And we have a tornado warning at this point for southeastern Coos County and western Oxford County. We just got an update to it. That's why it's blinking there on your screen. So I'm just going to step off screen and follow that update here. The rotation, as you can see, has moved a little bit farther south. It's now directly over Route 2, and it's a smaller area. What they do with these warnings is trim them as the storms kind of progress. The National Weather Service is now saying there's the potential for golf ball-sized hail within this thunderstorm, in addition to the potential tornado. And that potential tornado at this point is right in this area here, around Shelburne, New Hampshire. This would be where the tornado is. And as we move it along here, it's moving in this direction. So if you are in Shelburne, New Hampshire, that's where the potential tornado is at this point. It will be crossing into western Oxford County within the next 15 minutes or so, getting close to Route 113. And that's around Gilead. There's a lot of mountains and terrain up here that kind of makes tracking individual towns in the path of this one a little more difficult. But if you live in the Route 2 corridor, and especially from Route 2 south in Oxford County, that's the most concerning area with the storm at this point. And the National Weather Service says the tornado warning will continue until 11:15. They've updated it with that update for us. I'm still reading some of your comments here on Facebook, so if you can, keep us posted. Let's see, heavy rain now in Beddington. Thank you, Rhonda, for that. Getting some questions about other parts of the state at this point. And again, it's one isolated storm. And I see some questions asking, why are we on the air at this point? There are really two reasons we're on the air. One, it's our obligation when a tornado warning is issued to be on the air. But the second one is, this is a nighttime situation. It's particularly dangerous when you may have a tornado occurring at night. You may have people who are sleeping. You may have people who are out on the road and may not even know of the tornado warning. So that's why we're with you at this point. Even though it's such a small area, it's critically important that if there is a tornado, we get the word out. And this storm, although we haven't had reports of a tornado, it's had the classic look of a rotating supercell, the hail, the lightning, the heavy rain, in addition to the rotation that we've seen within the thunderstorm itself. So here's another look at it, and it's moving on off to the southeast as we've been tracking. Here are some of the towns that are in the path of the storm. We've got Stoneham, 11:10. So if you're in Stoneham, Maine, you are within this tornado warning at this point. Hastings, Maine is the more imminent threat, right over the border from Coos County. Hastings along Route 2. If you're in Hastings, if you're in Stoneham, and even Waterford, it's time to take this storm seriously. Again, a tornado warning is in effect for this area, but there's also a severe thunderstorm warning outside of this particular area at this time. Just so you all know, we do have an 11 o'clock news coming up, and the tornado warning is in effect through 11:15. So we'll stay with you on our 11 o'clock news and bring you updates as well, and Chris Costa will be involved with that as well once we get closer to that time. Just a reminder what to do. We've gone over this, but I want to pull up the hail on the screen, because the latest update from the Weather Service of the potential for golf ball sized hail is certainly not something that you see often, but we had the report out of Milan, New Hampshire of hail, and you can see over the last, we'll put it in this way, this is the track of the hail as the storm has gone southeast. You can see it going through Milan, through Berlin, crossing Route 2. This is a little bit delayed, but you get the idea. The storm has had the potential to produce hail, and has produced hail within that time frame as well. Getting a couple of good questions here on Facebook. I'm checking in on your comments when I have some time to. There are a lot of people camping in this area. And that is another concern. So if you know anybody who's in the western mountains of Maine, especially south of Route 2, around Lovell and Stoneham and Waterford, even though they're not in the tornado warning at this point, this storm is moving in their direction. So lightning is a concern, heavy rain is a concern, hail is a concern as this storm moves in. And it's a unique time of night to have this be a concern, of course. So the storm moving from Coos County into western Oxford County within the next couple of minutes. I'm just going to kind of reset these as the storm has moved along, and we'll get an updated tracker on it. Here's a look at the latest velocity here. It's certainly not as strong as it was before, but you can still see there's general motion in this way and that way. And when that happens, there is the potential for a tornado to form. And this is over a fairly isolated area of Coos County, but is moving toward, this is Route 113 in western Maine. It's moving toward Route 113. So this potential rotation will be getting into the Stoneham area perhaps. And we mentioned a couple of the other areas that were as well. I'll put a new track on this, Hastings, Maine. That's probably the area of most concern at this point. We'll re-center the track here to be from the middle of the storm as well. So I'm just going to reset. We'll also put the hail on here so you can see that, particularly this mode, the hail history, which allows us to go back and see where hail has happened within the thunderstorm. Let's see. Gorham, New Hampshire, hearing Gilead, hearing some thunder. I'm reading some of your comments on this. Let's see here. Just scrolling through. Golf ball sized hail would leave a mark. That's what Dwayne says. It certainly would. Carrie in Wilton just lost power. Carrie on our Facebook feed says she lost power in Wilton. Is Freiburg in the path? Freiburg at the moment is not in the path. But what we'll do here is I'll zoom in a little bit and show you just kind of the broader area. If this storm continues southeast, it would get into Sebago Lake after midnight. So again, that's not an imminent concern, but as the storm continues to move southeast, if it holds together, it would get into the lakes region around Sebago Lake, around Long Lake, around midnight. But at the moment, the most concerning part of the storm is just about to cross from Coos County into Oxford County in western Maine, and that's where we have the tornado warning that's in effect until 11:15 tonight. So with all that said, I'm kind of reading your comments here as we go, because at night it's often hard to get damage reports. The damage or storm reports we have received have been hail. In Milan, New Hampshire, we had some pictures of that come in of at least nickel-sized hail with the storm as it passed through. There are a couple of isolated storms elsewhere, one up near Greenville. There's another strong storm just off the edge of your screen coming into Burlington, Vermont. Although that won't really affect us in Maine, it would be more of a problem for New Hampshire. It goes to show kind of the widely scattered nature of these storms. They're not everywhere, but the ones that form are strong. And this is a particularly strong storm that's just about to cross from Gorham, New Hampshire into western Oxford County. The National Weather Service and even Keith Carson and I were texting about this before the warning came out. We saw the rotation within the thunderstorm, and when that rotation gets tight enough on radar, there's a certain trigger, a certain threshold, and when that threshold is met, they issue the tornado warning. Probably on the cautious side here, given it's nighttime and given the fact that there are people up in this region that are camping that may not be in the most sturdy structure. So that's why this warning was issued. We'll show you here on the velocity right now. You can see the couplet, we call it, the area where wind is moving from one direction and toward another. That's about to cross from New Hampshire into western Maine. Here's the time frame. This is, again, the updated timeline. As the storm continues southeast, it would get into the Waterford area between about 11:20 and 11:30, Bridgeton around 11:35, Oxford around 11:45. Those areas are outside of the tornado warning. We'll reevaluate when the storm crosses out of the warning whether or not it needs to be extended. My thinking at the moment, just based on what I'm seeing, is that it probably won't be extended except if there's a big flare-up. If there is a big flare-up of rotation, they'll probably extend it. But at the moment, it's kind of a borderline signature that I'm seeing on radar. It's not the most clear tornado signature. But nonetheless, southeastern, I should say, Oxford County, I'll back up. Western Oxford County, southeastern Coos County. This is the area of the tornado warning until 11:15. There has been quite a bit of hail in Coos County, Milan, New Hampshire, a report of hail that came in, and there may be some hail as you get into Gilead around Route 2 and just south of Route 2 as this storm crosses from New Hampshire into western Maine. So I've gone over this several times, but if you're new, you're just joining us, you're within the warning, or you know somebody who's within the warning, the key here is just to make sure they're in a sturdy structure away from windows in the middle of the home. Most of our tornadoes here are not, the most dangerous in terms of their power. But any storm, it could knock a tree on your home, and that does enough damage in and of itself. So it's incredibly important to protect yourself from any type of debris that could fall on your home and things like that. We haven't had any reports of damage yet. I want to emphasize that, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't take this situation seriously. I'm going to back you up to the radar one more time, and we're going to reset in just a couple of minutes as we get up on News Center at 11. But here's another view of it right now. A tornado warning in effect for Coos County and Oxford County until 11:15 this evening. It's a small area, but there is a tornado warning, and we're going to be keeping an eye on this as we go through our 11 o'clock news. In the meantime, if you're within this region, you need to take your tornado precautions at this point. If you're outside of it, keep an eye on this storm as it moves southeast over the next 15 to 20 minutes. That's the latest for right now. We're going to reset and bring you continuing coverage as News Center at 11 begins right now.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Chris Costa. Thank you for joining us for News Center Maine at 11. Right now, we are in the middle of a tornado warning for Coos County in New Hampshire and Oxford County in Maine. The Federal Communications Commission requires that during this tornado warning, we bring you weather coverage wall to wall until that tornado warning expires. Right now, we're going to send things over to meteorologist Ryan Breton, who's been on the air for the past half hour or so. We're also on Facebook Live for those of you who'd like to join us there. And Ryan, it's really important right now to make sure that anybody who lives in these areas is aware of this tornado warning, especially because it's happening so late at night, correct?
That's right, Chris. It's not a confirmed tornado at this point. We haven't had any reports of a tornado, but there is rotation within the thunderstorm that, especially about 20 or 25 minutes ago, was particularly strong and may have spawned a tornado, and that's still a concern at this point. It is a small geographic area. There are a couple of showers. Some of you are joining us on WLBZ. We've been in continuous coverage on WCSH. There are showers in northern Maine and showers along the down east coastline. Those are not severe at this point. There is some thunder and lightning with them, but they are not severe. The severe thunderstorm warning at this point, which we have been monitoring online and on the air for the last half hour or so, is in western Maine, just crossing in from New Hampshire. The tornado warned storm at this point is just south of Route 2, just south of Gilead, Maine, and moving to the southeast at about 30 miles per hour. The particular tornado warning area has gotten smaller as the storm has moved along. The National Weather Service will reevaluate hopefully soon. I'd rather hear sooner rather than later, because we don't want to keep you, with this warning unless it's really necessary. But at the moment, if you are within this area, you are under a tornado warning, western Oxford County. I'm going to step off screen and we'll show you the velocity mode of the radar, which we've been talking about, allows us to show the winds and how they rotate within the thunderstorm. And there is still a little bit of rotation with this storm, which indicates that the storm is capable of producing a tornado, wind blowing that way, wind blowing the other way. And we'll put a track on where this rotation is centered. So in theory, if this tornado threat continues into western Maine, it would be into Stoneham around 11:20, Waterford around 11:36, Bridgeton 11:47, and then Oxford as we get closer to midnight. Again, those towns are not in the tornado warning at this point, but the storm is moving in that general direction, and it's a strong one at that. In addition to all of the potential for a tornado that we've been discussing, there is a lot of lightning and a lot of heavy rain with this storm. I'm just following a couple of updates from the National Weather Service, and they kind of agree with my assessment that the rotation within the storm appears to be weakening. They do not have concrete reports of large hail or damage right now, but the National Weather Service says they expect the number of hail damage reports to significantly increase, especially by morning when people wake up and see what's happened, because there is the potential in a storm like this to produce golf ball sized hail. That was the case back in Coos County, and there still is that threat now that it's crossing into Oxford County. You can see the storm is not as organized as it was 15 or 20 minutes ago. It's smaller, there's less lightning. That's good news. That means that the storm is probably starting to weaken, but the threat is still there for a tornado to form, and the tornado warning remains in effect at this time. We'll show you some of the hail tracker on this, and you can see the hail formed with the thunderstorm in Coos County, New Hampshire. We do have some pictures of hail in Milan, New Hampshire, and that's where the hail may have been biggest in Coos County. And now there are some indications that there may still be a little bit of hail, likely small hail, with the storm just south of Route 2. I just got this report from our assignment editor, Teddy. Oxford County Dispatch in western Maine, no reports of damage so far. And that makes sense because we'll back the radar up. The bulk of the thunderstorm so far has been over Coos County in New Hampshire. It's now just recently crossed into Oxford County in Maine. We'll go back a little bit on the radar here to kind of show you, where we've been and how we've gotten here. It's a small area of concern at this point, but it's a serious concern nonetheless, particularly because it is the middle of the night. And as Chris mentioned, especially in these serious situations, it's our obligation to bring you this information. The storm passed over Berlin, New Hampshire, which, even though it's in Coos County, that's a significant city for a potential tornado to pass over. We'll bring the radar back to about 10 o'clock. At that point, there was no tornado warning, but the storm got really strong really fast as it moved over Milan, Berlin. This is probably when it was at peak intensity, around 10:30. And if there were a tornado, I think that's when it would have occurred. And you can kind of see in the recent frames there, it starts to fall apart. I'll take the lightning off just so you can see a little bit better. Much better, a signature there over Berlin, a little bit weaker now that it's into western Maine. And we'll zoom in a little tighter here. This is all that's left of the storm. There's still some lightning, there's still some heavy rain, there may be some hail, but to me, it doesn't look like a storm that has a significant tornado threat at the moment, but we have to wait until we get the all clear from the National Weather Service to completely go off the air and discount that, because a tornado warning, from all accounts, remains in effect until 11:15. Also, an update from Berlin, New Hampshire. No reports of damage there. That's a great sign because, as I mentioned, you can see here when we back the radar up, the storm was in much better shape when it went over Berlin compared to now. That doesn't mean there isn't damage happening now, but it's a good sign that we haven't had any major reports of damage. We'll show you the velocity, which I discussed, can show us how the winds are moving within the storm. And this is when the rotation was tightest, just as it came into Berlin about 10:30. Wind blowing that way, wind blowing that way. You can clearly see the difference in colors there, indicating the speed and direction of the wind. If we track this southeast, and I'll pan down, you can see it's not as defined. It's a little more cluttered. And that's a good sign. That probably means there isn't a tornado happening right now, but we usually wait a little while until that signature goes away to sound the all clear, because this is a serious storm nonetheless. We are also streaming up on Facebook, and I appreciate all of the people who have been chiming in with updates through the evening. Christine can hear and see lightning in Oxford, and we'll widen out just a little bit. Gorham, just wind, quiet thunder. You can hear thunder in Gorham. That must be Gorham, New Hampshire. I think Chris has a question. We can bring Chris Costa in. Chris, feel free to jump in any time here.
Okay, Ryan, just to provide some of our viewers with a little bit of perspective here, I want to tell you that Central Maine Power Company is also reporting a number of power outages in the area of Cumberland County, Franklin County, Kennebec County, and Somerset County. Although the majority of those roughly 7,500 customers without power is in Franklin County. 68,000 customers that Central Maine Power Company is reporting as of 10:56 p.m. according to their outage listing website. About another 670 in Kennebec County, and then less than 10 in the counties of Somerset and Cumberland as far as those power outages are concerned.
Yeah, and Chris, those power outages would be outside of the area that this storm went through,
right?
Which is a good sign.
Yes, and the other thing that we wanted to mention as well, the National Weather Service, you had mentioned, Ryan, the hail that's going on. The National Weather Service in Gray retweeted a photo from somebody who showed, as you had mentioned earlier, some nickel-sized hail, and I believe you said the town of Milan, New Hampshire. And if we're able to pull that up, I want to show a picture so that people can get an idea of what kind of hail people are seeing in that general area. Hopefully soon we'll be able to pull it up for you. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we're addressing your comments on Facebook Live. If you take a look at that, there's that hail, Ryan. And I don't know if you know about the capability of a hail that size, what kind of damage it could possibly cause.
That's not damaging hail, Chris, but it is hail nonetheless. And it was right after we got that report of hail in Milan, as the storm started to go into Berlin, that the hail signature kind of ramped up a little bit. So there may, and I'm in a chat here, an information chat with the National Weather Service, and they say they expect some reports of large hail to surface. I can show you within our radar where damage reports have come in, and at the moment there's that one hail report that comes in from Milan. That's the picture that you saw there about nickel-sized hail. That was at 10:16. So there may have been some bigger hail after that. And again, that's mainly in Coos County, New Hampshire. Mm-hmm.
And Ryan, I know that there's a lot of questions coming in on our Facebook Live right now. One person asking, Destiny's asking, will it come to Penobscot County? You had just kind of tracked out the path of that storm. If it continues to be a tornado warning as it would near the Lakes region, do you want to just one more time share with people who are just chiming in, or excuse me, just tuning in, to show them the path of that storm? And a quick reminder for all of you who are tuning in to News Center Maine at 11 right now, expecting to see news coverage, we want to explain to you that during a tornado warning, it's required by the Federal Communication Commission that we stay on the air wall to wall with coverage of this tornado warning and mapping its expected track so that anybody who is in its potential path is warned of the possibility of a tornado. And Ryan, you had mentioned at this point no concrete reports that a tornado has actually formed, correct?
That's right. And the storm has weakened considerably, Chris, since we came on about 45 minutes ago. You can see its structure is not as strong. It appears to be kind of dying out, and the National Weather Service says they expect to discontinue the warning at 11:15. But nonetheless, in case something changes, we will stay with you here for the next 5 minutes or so. And just so those of you who are in western Maine and maybe wondering about this storm, where is it heading? It's moving southeast, and if it maintains its current speed, it would be into Bridgeton about 11:30, Sweden in about 15 minutes, Casco about 11:45, and then midnight or after for Raymond and Windham. But again, I really want to emphasize, at the moment, the storm does not appear to be at the same strength it was 15 or 20 minutes ago. It still has heavy rain. It still has lightning, which in and of itself are a problem. It does not have the damage signature that it did a few minutes ago. And if that changes, I'll stay here and make sure that we let you know through the night. But at the moment, the main concern with this storm as it comes out of the Oxford Hills and into the Lakes region is heavy rain, lightning, perhaps a little bit of small hail. The tornado warning is in effect for another few minutes, but to me, the signature just isn't really there that was 15 or 20 minutes ago. I mean, we're just not seeing the winds within the storm, which we can determine by radar to be quite as strong. But nonetheless, the tornado warning is still in effect. Just getting an update from Teddy on the Franklin County numbers that you provided us with, Chris. Franklin County Dispatch says the 6,800 outages are not storm related, which makes sense because this storm was in New Hampshire and western Maine. But nonetheless, 6,800 people without power on a Saturday night is no fun. So
Sure.
they're not sure what the cause of that outage is at this point, but we'll pass along more information on that when we get it.
That's certainly good to clarify, Ryan, just because I know we have a lot of people who are commenting on our Facebook Live right now on our News Center main page that they are without power in a lot of those Franklin County towns, Farmington, Wilton. But just so that we're clear, that power outage, as far as the Franklin County Dispatch can confirm, not weather related at this point. But we are seeing more and more of those comments on our Facebook Live asking about severe weather alerts that we're getting as well. And Ryan, just because we get a severe weather alert does not necessarily mean that a tornado warning is coming. Is that right?
That's correct. If you get a warning is from the National Weather Service, and when they issue a warning, that means the storm is either producing or is very capable of producing damaging wind gusts, hail, or a tornado. So that's why we're with you here, because this tornado warning came out around 10:30. And from what I can hear from them, they do expect to expire at 11:15, but we'll stay on just in case until we get the absolutely all clear from them. I do want to take the radar full for one more minute here, Chris. The storm itself is now over Stoneham, which, as you can see, there's a lot of heavy rain, some lightning coming into Route 5. Route 35 in Stoneham at this point. There isn't a clear tornado signature with this, but there is still a little bit of broad rotation. It's nothing like we had been seeing earlier, but a lot of heavy rain, a lot of lightning in Stoneham, and there may be a little bit of small hail too. It's nothing like we saw coming into Berlin. You can see as I play this through, the colors on the screen there kind of fade out, but there may still be some small hail that's within this thunderstorm coming into Stoneham. I expect the tornado warning will get discontinued within the next couple of minutes, but I'll put a tracker on this one more time, because even if there is not a tornado warning, it's still a nighttime thunderstorm that will wake up people. Perhaps there are folks having a campfire on the weekend before 4th of July, and as soon as you hear thunder or can see lightning in the distance, it's a good idea to get inside and seek shelter, because you really don't want to be messing with something like this. I'm monitoring my feeds from the Weather Service, and at the moment it doesn't appear they are going to extend this any farther, but they do say that this storm coming into Sweden at this point is capable of hail, pea-sized hail, and wind gusts over 40 miles per hour. So those wouldn't be damaging like they were 15, 20, 30 minutes ago, but that is strong enough to disrupt any outdoor plans, make it dangerous to be outside. So as this storm moves southeast, that is something you're going to keep in mind. And real quickly here, before I expect this to be discontinued, I do want to show there are more storms upstream in southern Canada. One storm that's moving into Burlington, Vermont, and a couple of other storms that are going to be moving into northwestern Maine. So I'll be here through the night in case anything gets out of hand, because you can see a couple of these flaring up in southern Canada, and then Corey will be here in the morning as well. At this point, the tornado warning has gone away, so I will be back before the end of our scheduled newscast to at least bring you the 7-day, and we'll send it back to Chris for a little more news. Thanks for sticking with us.
Ryan, thank you so much for keeping us all updated on the path of that tornado warning. Again, no confirmed reports of a touchdown of a tornado of any kind, but that severe weather over the western part of Maine heading towards the Lakes region, and just moments ago, the National Weather Service expiring that tornado warning that came on just shortly before 10:30. We've been live on our News Center Maine Facebook page as well. We'll probably begin to shut that down as well as we take a break right now, and we'll bring you the headlines when we return.